Hello Wargamers, it is 2025 and we are back and hopefully going to be making a lot more videos this year. Like many of you, I am eagerly awaiting the delivery of the Krieg box set this weekend. But after some careful thought, I'm not sure I want to paint my Kriegers the way that I did my previous ones. So if you have a look at the ones that I did previously, these are my kill team ones. They've all had head swaps and a few other little bits done to them. And then I've painted them in quite a muted tone. I've been looking at them and been thinking I quite like the idea of matching them to my Kriegtorian Cadians. So I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give them a test paint job with this today and show you how it turns out. And what I'm going to do first is, this is the model we're working with. He's already had his neck drilled out and a Kriegtorian head added. Head itself is from Anvil Miniatures. What I've done is I've given him a black base coat and then a grey zenithal highlight. Now, what you'll find if you do keep watching me is that I prefer to paint quick, easy paint jobs. I like to get my models painted for the tabletop. I'm a firm believer in if it looks good from 3 feet away, then that's good enough. I'm not a competitive painter. I'm never going to win a Golden Demon, but I think I paint well enough to look at it from 3 feet away and say, actually, that's not a bad model. So what I do is I give it the zenithal paint coat that I've done already, the starter, and then I like to give it I suppose everyone's calling it the Slapchop method. What I like to do is give it a dry brush with a Corax White. So I'm just going to quickly do the dry brush on Corax White, and then we'll look at the first contrast colour that I'm going to use. Again, a lot of people call this Slapchop. I hate the term Slapchop, but it is the painting method I use, and it is the one that it's the name that people are calling it. So we'll get those out of the way. I'm going to start with some white on my dry brush. I'm sure I don't need to show you all how to do this. I'm sure you've all dry brushed in the past, but we'll do it in a downward motion just to make sure that we're only picking up the edges and the highlights, ready for when we do come in with those contrast paints. It's nice and quick, no messing. We're not going for perfect, we just want to give the model a highlight and pick out those raised areas so that when the contrast paint does go on, it does its job, it catches those highlights and recesses properly. And you can see we've already got the dark and the grey, so we've got the 3 levels of highlight on here and low lights. And if you do look at it from the bottom, you can see that it's pretty dark, so when that contrast paint does flow into there, it does give it quite a shaded colour. And you'll see, like I said, it's the exact same method that I did with these guys, and it's just a case of getting it primed black, primed grey from a zenithal, and then a dry brush of white over the top. And that's just to pick out all of those edges ready. We'll put this to one side for a minute just to make sure that that paint is fully dry, and then we'll get started. Right, so now that's dry, we're going to get started with the first of our contrast paints. So it's going to be Guardsman Flesh. Now I use this not as a skin tone, I will do eventually, but in this instance it's going to be a leather. So Guardsman Flesh, if you do 2 coats of this on any leather sections, it does give a really nice dark leather look. So I'm going to do this in this instance on his boots and his gloves. So I'm just going to do the first coat really quickly and get that down there. Now I will later on come in and do the flesh with Guardsman Flesh, but not before putting a lighter coat on, because it comes out just too dark for a skin tone over the grey. So when I do come back, it will be a Wraithbone Flesh, and then the contrast paint over the top, which actually makes it a lighter look. But you can see with this, it's quite a dark brown that we're getting. and it's the same way that I've done all my leathers for the last couple of years, the dark leather look. When it comes to lighter leather, I will use snakebite leather, but that will be for the straps and the backpack, and the chest plate here will all be with snakebite leather. So let's get the first coat of this finished, and again, like I said earlier, it's nice and quick. I'm not a painter that paints for prizes. As long as I'm happy with it and how it looks from 3 feet away, that is how it will stay. Now, there's every possibility I'll come back later and do what people are calling Contrast Plus, where I'll add my own highlights and things to it. But at the minute, as anyone who plays Guard knows, it's a lot more important to get models painted and on the table than it is to get them perfect. And when you're running hordes of infantry, especially with the new Krieg coming out this weekend, it's a lot more important to get a model painted and on the table than it is to make it Golden Demon ready. So I'll come back once the second coat of that's been done. So that's the second coat of Guardsman flesh that's done and drying. As you can see, this is starting, it's still a little bit wet, but it is giving it that nice brown leather look. So next up, we're going to do the trousers. Now, as everyone knows, the Praetorians have blue trousers, so we're going to be using Leviathan blue to do this. So just give it a quick shake, make sure all the contrast paints and pigment and everything's mixed in. And grab our brush, and again, it's not going to be anything special. It's just going to be slapping the paint on. I suppose that's where it gets the name Slapchop. And that is just get all that blue on there. Now we do need to be careful around the coat because the dark blue will make the red turn purple later, and we don't want purple coats, we want red ones. So that is the blue done. Again, it's nice, quick. We don't want to spend forever painting models. Just want them done and quickly. Normally I would batch paint these, so what I'd do is I'd get the blue done. I'd do them in squads of 5, so I'd get the blue done on 1, paint the other 4. By the time I painted the other 4, the contrast paint, the blue is dried. There's no waiting between these. So we're going to be using the Flesh Tearers Red, not what I'd said previously. So we'll get that open and pop to one side. I've cleaned off the brush. We did, like I said, manage to catch it with a damp brush and get all of that Blood Angels red off. So load the brush up, and like I said before, I am going to paint these sections here red. But I may come back and paint them cream to match the armour later. I was doing a bit of research on this, and there are instances, obviously these are based on the Kriegtorian models, which were based on the models from the Zulu War, specifically Rorke's Drift, I think it is, the film with Michael Caine in. And I have done a bit of research, and there are instances from that time period where these coats have had the same colour lining, so red in this instance, and also where they've had other colours, cream, blue, etc. There's also instances of coats being completely different colours, so it wouldn't be unusual to see a red lining along with the red outer coat, like we're doing here for the time being. Now I may, when I've done all this, decide that I want to do a lining that matches the armour colour, so that would be a Wraithbone with then a contrast of Skeleton Horde over the top, which is what gives the colour on the Cadian models. So we'll see what happens with that and how I feel about it when we come to doing those colours. So I'll crack on with this and I'll bring it back once all of the red is painted in for you. So it looks like that red is now dry, as you can see. What we're going to do next is we're going to look at the straps, the gun strap, the chest straps and the backpack. And we're going to paint them in snakebite leather. We've given it a good shake already. Just pop that open into one side. And like I've said, we'll go and we'll do the straps, the belt, the chest box thing, and the gun strap, and then the backpack, and any straps. And then what we'll do afterwards is we'll come in with Militarum green, and we'll do the bedrolls here. This little container at the bottom, I imagine it's metal, so whilst I'm going to do the straps around it, the container itself I'm going to come back in when I get to the metallics phase, and I will do that in silver. And then after I've done it in silver, much like the grenade, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put Creed camo over the top to give it a nice metallic green look. So we'll crack on. Like I said, I'm going to do the backpack and the straps and the webbing and things on his chest, all in this colour. So the backpack, as you've seen, and then the gun strap. So that's the leather straps and webbing and backpack, all painted in snakebite leather. So now on to Militarum green, and again it's a contrast paint, and we're just going to do the bedroll. So it's just the one, just this bedroll here. I'll just get that painted up again, nice and quickly. We're at a point now where we do need to be a little bit more careful with this painting, because we do have more colours that we can spoil and ruin if we're not careful with this. We don't need to be perfect, but we do need to be a little bit more cautious. I've not worried too much with these bits here on the pads, on the shoulder pads, because like I said earlier, the pads and the helmet and the straps around the boots here, they're all going to get painted with Wraithbone. They'll get 2 coats of Wraithbone and then a coat of Skeleton Horde over the top, and that'll just give it that dingy look in the recesses, I suppose. Kind of a faded look. That's what we've got here. If you look in the recesses, we've got a slight browning on it. So we'll go for that look, and you see on the shoulder pads here, just on the edges, and that's what we've got there. So we'll do that with those, so we're not too fussed about going over a little bit with the contrast. Normally I do like to stick within the lines when doing contrast paints, but with little bits like that where I know I'm going to go over it, I don't mind so much. If I'm going over it with a standard paint, a layer paint, or a metallic, then I don't mind if I do go out of the lines a little bit. So again, quick green coat on that bedroll, give that a minute to dry, and then next up we're going to paint the gun, and that's going to be done with Black Templar contrast paint. We'll paint it all black, and then, like I said before, I'm going to come in, I'm going to pick out some metallic bits on it. That's just to make it quick and get it on the table quicker. So we'll give that a minute to dry, and then we'll come back in with that Black Templar. Right, so that green should be dry now, so we're going to get our Black Templar as contrast paint, giving it a good shake, and then, like I said, we're just going to come in and we're just going to paint the gun. So we're just literally going to coat the entire gun in Black Templars, and then I'll come back through later and I'll pick out the last pack and the barrels and probably the skull with a silver later. Just straight over the top with it, same as with everything else. Nice thick coat, one coat of contrast paint, and we'll just get that done nice and quickly. Again, when we get closer to the bits that we've already painted, we'll be a little bit more careful and just get in there with that. Make sure that everything is covered. Right, so now that is all the major contrast paints done. There's still a little bit more to do contrast paint wise, but the next step we're going to look at is getting the base coat down for our tan colour, beige colour, whatever you'd want to call it. So that'll be the armour, the helmet, the straps around the boots. I think I am going to go and do this on the coat as well. And while I'm at it, I'm going to get that wraithbone down on the flesh as well. So I'm literally going to paint the entire head with wraithbone. I'm using a finer detail brush, Rosemary & Co. Series 323 to get this done. It gives me a little bit more control, and they are better in general for doing layer paints and things. So we'll get a bit of water on the brush and get started with that. It's going to take a couple of coats to do this, but it will be a case of just finally going in there and getting right into the detail with it. Like I said, this is just a base for the next set of contrast paints. It's just a couple of thin coats, like we all know for doing these sorts of paints. A couple of thin coats is better than one thick one. So that's all I'm going to do, just thin the paint down, just put a nice thin layer on. So it's going to be the shoulder pad, the helmet is going to get that, and the rest of the head, and then the straps and the legs. So I'll come back once that's all done. Right guys, so you can see done all the cream bits, all the wraithbone, so we've now got a nice surface to do our skeleton horde on. This is going to give it a bit of depth and a bit of shade, and then what we're going to do is we're going to come back in over the top of that once it's dry, and we're going to add our wraithbone back on just on the raised section so we get that shadow across the models. So as you can see, we've got the helmet, the shoulder pads, the coat and the boot wrappings are all going to get this contrast coat over the top of them. The same as with the other ones, going to be quite generous with the coating. Because we are going to cover this up, I am going to spread it out a little bit more than I normally would. Get into those recesses, ready for us to come and pick out the upper layers later on, and that will then give us a similar finish to this one. So you can see the difference there. The one's quite a I suppose it's more of a tea stain look, and that'll just sit in the shadows afterwards. So we're going to do that across those surfaces. Like I did say earlier, I did decide to do the lining of the coat in the same style, so I'll quickly get that done, and then we're on to the metallics and doing the silver on the gun and the box on the front of his jacket. So there we go, that's the first coat of the skeleton horde. As you notice, I have just missed his belt buckle just there. There we go. So we want the belt buckle to be the same colour. We're going to pop him down to one side, and I'm going to quickly grab our Dark Oath flesh. I did decide not to use golden flesh this time, just to give a bit of variation. We don't want them all to have the same skin colour and skin tone. So we've got Dark Oath flesh again, and we're just going to quickly do his face. Now again, I know I've said this probably 100 times in this video, that I don't paint for awards, so I am not going to mess about with the eyes. I am literally going to slap on this flesh, make sure it gets everything covered, make sure I get his chin. And that is literally it. That is him, his flesh done. So now we're on to those metallics. I am a huge fan of keeping things simple, so we are going with lead belcher. Nice and easy. Everyone's got some, and it's easy to get hold of. I'm going to squirt some on my palette. And then we're going to pick out sections of his last gun and the grenade in his hand and the canister on his back. So it's these bits here, so we're going to do the middle of his pouch, grenade, the clips and fastenings on his gun, the canister on his back, and a few bits of the barrel and the last charge. So let's do his canister on his back first. So that's the metallic details done. There's not a great deal of metallics to do on these models. You can if you want to. The whole blast rifle could have been silver if I'd wanted it to be, but that's not what I wanted from these. So that's the metallics done, the face done. The only thing left to do is I did miss earlier on his chin strap under his head when I was doing the snakebite leather, and maybe a little bit of hair, but we can't really see where his hair is, so I'll probably just put a drop of Guardsman fur in there just to tidy that up, but I'll do that off camera. And then the next thing to do is come back in with some Krieg camo. I'm just going to go over the metallic on the canister and on the grenade and make those green, nice metallic green. Wash over the last rifle and then come back in and put that the flesh wraithbone colour back onto these sections to bring the colours back up. So I'll just take a few minutes to let that dry, and then we'll come back in and we'll have done the hair and the chin strap, and then we'll look at doing that wraithbone back on these sections, the higher raised sections, so that we can see what's going on with those. Right, so off camera we've just gone through, and as I said I was going to do, I've added the green to the grenade and the canister on the back. I've given the last rifle an all over null oil wash. I'm just waiting for that to dry, and then I've done the chin strap and the hair that we can't really see right at the back here. So now the only thing left to do, and then we'll call it tabletop ready, is to get this back to a paler, more of a bone colour than what we've got at the minute. The tea staining yellow is not really what we're aiming for. It's not the equivalent of the Kriegtorians. I'm just going to get the brush, a little bit of wraithbone on it. I'm just going to pick out these upper edges and just bring that colour back in. We're going to leave the shadows still. We're just going to add this back on in a lot of the sections. So as you can see, it's rather than a brushing effect, it's more of a stippling that we're doing. So you don't want to add too much and lose those shadows and that colour. It's just little pulls of the brush just on the edges. I've done this in the past using a dry brush instead of an actual brush. You tend to spill over and colour everything that you don't actually want to get. So just switch to a brush that's got a finer tip on it, just to give me a little bit more control on this. Right guys, so there we go. That is the Kriegtorian finished. That's the Kriegtorian version of him. So let me know what you think. Thank you for sticking by and watching. If you have enjoyed this video, give us a like and subscribe. We're gonna be able to bring you a few more this year, and opinions and feedback on what you think of the Kriegtorian. Okay, thanks for watching. Bye.